Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DC Trainings. It is Thursday, as it always is when we do our webinar and podcast for you. And we're currently moving through Module 1. We're now in week 5, which is the training schedule. So Module 1 being team development is broken up into 8 parts. And week 5, which is part number 5, is our training schedule, which if you've been following along, we left off with our last section on the hiring. We made our decision, the final interviews, and then we actually ended with that with making our decision. So if you've been tracking along with us, this means that now we have officially hired our new CA, and there's just this abundance of potential. We're really excited because we took the time to find the right person, to make sure they have all the right talents and the right potential. And now we're going to start to train them, right? To bring them up to speed in our office. And really, I love to use this analogy. Many of you have heard me use it before, but the analogy is, if let's say that before you knew anything about chiropractic, and think back to those days, if it was a long time ago, for me it was. But before I had, as we say in chiropractic, been dipped in the chiropractic philosophy, if I went into a CVS, or back then it was, what was it called? It was like Long's Drugstore, I think, back then. But anyways, a CVS, and I looked down the rows and aisles of prescription medications or over-the-counter medications or pharmaceutical products, I would see those items as placed there to help people become healthier, right? And I would see that as a great thing. Well, now, given that we've sort of gone through this paradigm shift, or we have this different way of looking at health, we know that those items in those aisles are really geared towards crisis care, when your health has slipped away, and we use those items to sort of manage our symptoms while we get our health hopefully back on track. And for some, unfortunately, they use those to manage symptoms on a long-term basis and don't ever get their health back on track. But that's another story. But we use those items for healthcare. And through those lenses, when we walk into the store, we see that as a great opportunity, that store is designed to help people maintain health. And then we get exposed, or we get dipped in chiropractic, and we see that actually health is coming from the inside. It's a job of innate. Our innate intelligence has this ability to maintain a homeostasis inside of us and strives towards optimum health as long as it's given the right environment to do so. There's another name for that, and that is the terrain. Our body is our terrain. We take care of our body, and our terrain maintains health. That way, when we get exposed to some germ or some environmental factor, that our body doesn't succumb to that and become symptomatic or challenged in a way of health. So my wife and I have subscribed to the chiropractic philosophy now for 27 years, and we've been together for 31. So we've had a long history of being able to sort of see the different sides of this approach to healthcare. So for Christmas, she got me a t-shirt, and I'm wearing it today. And it says, "The germ is nothing, the terrain is everything." And it's by Louis Pasteur. And Louis Pasteur was the one who actually wrote the germ theory, which says, as you know, when you come in contact with a germ, the germ will cause a disease based on whatever that germ's genre or species is. But Louis Pasteur renounced his claim after he won the Nobel Prize, and he actually came up with this quote where he said, I know I wrote the germ theory, I won a Nobel Prize for it, but in reality, the more I look into this, the germ is nothing, the terrain is everything. Which brings us back to where I started this thread, and that is, we've just hired a new CA who potentially, when they walk into a CVS, they see it the way that I used to look at a CVS or a Long's Drugstore previous to my exposure to chiropractic. But since I've learned about chiropractic, and I've learned about healthcare through the lens of chiropractic, I understand now that it's all about how I take care of my body. And to be able to share that with a new CA and give them this new lens to look through is incredibly empowering, right? We actually are sharing the lifestyle that we live and we know to be true as chiropractors with a new individual, aside from where they're working, but just sharing this new lens, a new way of taking responsibility for your own healthcare and actually maintaining optimum health is very exciting. And I really enjoy the process. I mean, it's unfortunate to have somebody leave your team or lose a good CA, but to have somebody join your team and have the opportunity to share this chiropractic message or the chiropractic principles is really a lot of fun. And to see their eyes just open up and go, wow, nobody's ever told me this before, is a really powerful place to start. So I wanted to just set the stage with the next couple of sections in DC trainings, because we're going to be going through this process as it relates to a brand new individual who's just joined our team and is like a sponge. They're just soaking up all this information, and it's really potentially going to help them to see a different angle on their own healthcare, and then give them the ability to help our patients through that philosophy as well, now that they've joined our team, but when they're fully trained, they can really share that message. So let's get into our topic today. I want to share, I'm going to jump over to the website just real quickly because I want to share actually, I don't want to share that one. I'm sorry. Let me back up and share the other screen. Here, I'll do it this way. Okay. There we go. Sorry, I had the screens backwards for a minute. Okay. So you can see on my screen, we're in training schedule. Again, module 1, week 5. Don't forget to RSVP for our upcoming seminar on March 23rd. That'll be our next section on new patient. So you can RSVP directly through the website for that. But let's jump in here and let me show you this process of getting your CA quickly trained. And before I do, and not to bait the carrot anymore, but I just want to go back to where we started in the sense that, this module, in the sense that we have potentially had someone leave our team, right? A CA left our team, and maybe that's why we're hiring. I know for some of you, you're hiring for the very first time, and that's fine. But if somebody left our team and we're looking to rehire, if you follow the DC trainings process, I'll show you how to do that in literally a month. So, if somebody gives you a 2-week notice and you're panicking saying, oh, wow, how am I going to be able to serve all these patients without my CA running the front desk and doing all the things that they do? I'm going to show you how to fast track that. So with this training schedule, that's where it gets pretty exciting. We want to jump right in. So the first thing to share with this new employee, aside from the chiropractic philosophy, is to share what they're going to be responsible for. And I'm just going to add an example of this because in our own DC training seminars, I have asked the audience, and I've picked out a CA, just random CAs in the audience, and said, what is it that you're responsible for in the office if you narrowed it down to one thing? And the unfortunate thing is, many times, not always, of course, but many times I'll get an answer of, well, I run the front desk and I schedule appointments and I answer the phones, right? Those aren't wrong answers, but from a business owner perspective, I know doctors, you want to be a doctor and you want to take care of your patients, and that's the first and most and highest priority. But there's also this other side of you that needs to run a successful business in terms of your chiropractic practice. And what each person needs to be understanding. And I see Celeste just jumped on our call here today. So welcome, Celeste. It's great to see you on our call. And I know that you've got this down. So my compliments to you, because I know you've obviously been doing this. But what I want to know from a CA is in terms of answering that question, what is it that you're responsible for in the office? I want to know that it's something measurable. And ultimately, in terms of running a business, it needs to be measurable in terms of the bottom line, right? We can't run a free clinic and do this as a charity. We need to actually be able to keep the lights on and keep our CAs paid and make an income. So as it says on the screen, each employee monitors their own progress towards their assigned goals. That's measurable. Okay, now that has to be made clear, because that way, when you have a new CA that joins your team, they know right from the start, I'm going to be responsible for this. And it has to be a number that's measurable and ultimately translates over to the bottom line. There we go. Okay. So by the way, just as an FYI, for those of you who are new on our call, if you have a question, you can obviously type that in anytime, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute your line. Just make sure you have a speaker of some sort that I can hear your voice. But anyway, so yeah, just type in your questions anytime. Okay, so let's keep going, because now that we've assigned that responsibility right from the start, like a brand new employee comes in and you say, welcome to the team. This is where we're going to go with this thing. You have just joined an incredibly dynamic practice with healthcare approaches that are probably different than anything you've seen anywhere else. And oh, by the way, you're going to be responsible for new patients. And this is what that means. Done. Okay. Now, I want to flip that around and give you some of the mistakes that doctors make when they're hiring a new employee. And these are areas where it can be, unfortunately, if you don't understand these, you can shoot yourself in the foot, basically, because you hire somebody and you have all these high expectations and they have this ambitious energy. They want to start and they want to learn and they want to do well. And then we fall short of providing for those expectations. And then when they fail to reach our expectations, then we blame them. But actually, there's another way to look at this. So here's some common training mistakes that we can fall into unless we know about them, and then we won't. Okay, so the first one is a failure to outline job duties. Well, in DC trainings, we give you the job duties in specific descriptions that you can use as a framework to develop your own job duties. So you don't have to, I mean, you could use ours, that's fine. They're directly from my practice, and I use them with all my employees. In fact, yesterday, and not to share numbers with you to create, competition or anything other than I'm in full-time practice just like you. Yesterday, we had a great day. I personally adjusted 146 people yesterday, and we saw 7 new patients. We had 3 reports of findings. 100% of them started care, and we had 3 care plan renewals or CPRs, and 100% of them started care. So that was like a good, average day. We fell a little bit short on our patient visit goals, but that was okay. We did well overall. So I share that with you because if I let my team know exactly what those goals are, and I know what responsibilities they have to attain those goals, then they have a game plan. So we don't want to fail to outline those job duties. Now let's keep going. The next one is to outline expectations. And I shared that example of my own practice intentionally with you because in terms of outlining expectations, if I have a CA that comes in, I'm going to specifically let them know, here's our new patient goals. Here's our patient visit goals. Here's our collections goals. Here's the things that you're going to be doing. And those are all important parts of that training schedule. The next one is to create an order of priorities. So in some cases, we have a CA who doesn't understand what are the highest priorities. Now, I have a great example yesterday because we have a relatively new CA who's learning. So I saw a new patient. The new patient went up and scheduled their report of findings. And unfortunately, the CA, without knowing, it wasn't even intentional, scheduled the report of findings for greater than 1 week out. Okay, so I think it was like around the 1st of March or something like that. And so I caught that, fortunately, and because I was following up, and I said, when is this new patient coming back for her report of findings? And as BJ Palmer said, we must inspect what we expect. That's a BJ Palmer quote. We must inspect what we expect. So I was checking the schedule to see when that new patient was going to be coming back, and I realized that it was greater than a week out. So I let my CA know about one of the priorities of scheduling a new patient for their report of findings. And that priorities in my office is the report of findings must happen within 1 week of the new patient appointment, or else 50% of those new patients won't come back. They'll find help elsewhere before the report of findings even happens. So you must let your team know what are the top priorities. When do you want to see your report of findings coming back after the new patient appointment? What is it? What comes first? A patient recall, a new patient, a reactivation call, collecting a payment, all these things, and they're outlined in the job duties that we've given you. So you can take a look at those. The next one is failure to explain why priorities are important. So if I had said the reason why the new patients must be scheduled within 1 week for their report of findings, if I just left it at that, well, there's not a why behind it. We have to have a why. And the why in this case, as I shared with you, is that if we don't schedule the report of findings within 1 week, more than 50% of those new patients won't even come back at all. They'll find help somewhere else. So that's another mistake that sometimes gets made in terms of outlining not only what to do, but why to do it and what the priorities are. Okay, let's keep going. Another one is a failure to implement team accountability. And I'm going to go back to using that example because I shared with you there's a specific goal that this new CA, in our example, is going to be responsible for in terms of numbers of new patients. So a new patient goal means that now that CA has ownership around that accountability or that goal, that number, that responsibility. There has to be some team accountability. Now in DC trainings, and I'm going to show you this in a few minutes, but we have the goals tracking system. It's provided as part of your membership where you can actually put in your goals and then you can put in your actual results and it will track your success rates against your own goals. And this is something that is a lot of fun. I'm going to actually share those with you from my own office in a moment, but we must have team accountability. The next one is the two, they're combined actually. The next one is we punish poor performance. This would be a mistake, or we reward high performance. Actually, I guess I'm saying that backwards. Yes, I did say that backwards on the slide. So let me explain. So the reason why this is so important here, there we go, is that let's say that I have a CA who's running the front desk and they have not been calling the missed appointments, for example. So they're really not following up on patients who have missed their appointments. And I've asked them to do that and they repeatedly just don't do it. They don't do any follow-up. They just take care of the person that's standing in front of them. And after that, I don't know who didn't show or anything. I have another CA who's doing, in this example, this isn't a real life example, but let's just say this patient's doing a great job of seeing the new patients. We're meeting our new patient goal. This CA is also doing our billing, and the billing's going out on time, and they're just doing a great job. And I realized, this one over here is doing such a great job that I'm going to give them the missed appointment recalls to do because they're doing such a good job. And so I give it to them and they say, okay, no problem, doc. And they get that done too. Great. Then I find another problem. The patient isn't doing the reactivation part of the front desk. And so I realized, wow, they're not doing the reactivation part of the front desk. This other CA does reactivation great. So I'm going to give that to that one too. And I go to that other CA and I say, on top of the billing and the new patients and the recalls, I'm also going to give you the reactivation. And the CA says, okay, that's great. Sure. No problem. Just bring it on. And I get that too, or she gets that too in this case, right? Now, what have I just done? I've really loaded the plate with the A player, the CA that's doing a great job. And I've reduced the workload for the C player that's not doing a good job. That is backwards. We want to make sure that we hold our team accountable for what it is that we've assigned for them to do. So on the screen, I know it says punish poor performance. That's actually what you want to do. That's not a mistake. So it should say reward poor performance, which is in the example of what I just did. And then at the same time, actually, let me just go back to here because I'm not sharing my screen for you. I need to share my screen. Okay. And at the same time that I'm rewarding poor performance, I'm punishing high performance because I just gave more work to the CA that's doing a great job and reduced the workload for the CA that's not doing a good job. And that's really a mistake that we want to avoid. So those are those two examples. Like I said, they tie into each other. And then after that, actually, I'm sorry, let's go back up. So I just wanted to kind of point those out so you can avoid those pitfalls. And the best part about this is it's going to create a good long-term working relationship. I kind of showcased Celeste in Dr. Knich's office because Celeste has been a CA for a long time. And obviously having balance around the training schedule helps you to develop the skills and the longevity of a great A player CA. like Celeste. So I just wanted to, again, point out this process so that you can avoid those pitfalls. Okay, so let's keep going. And I had a question just typed in from somebody on the call that are these recorded webinars available for members to view repeatedly? And the answer is yes. The webinars are recorded and they're stored on the website for members to access. We also store the recorded seminar videos. So those are on there as well. And you can access those anytime, 24/7. You could watch the videos in your pajamas and relax on your couch with a cup of coffee, any way you choose. Okay, so let's keep going though. So now that we've kind of got those pitfalls out of the way, let's transition over to the workstation. And, obviously this is a place where potentially a CA might spend 8 hours in a day at this one particular place, right? Say it's the front desk. So we want to make sure from a chiropractic standpoint that this workstation is going to be ergonomic. And here's a great example, because again, I'm in full-time practice like you. My CA just recently came to me and we already have an ergonomic workstation, but she said, I would like a sit-stand workstation. Great, done. So we ordered her one of these counters that she just pushes a button and it raises right up and she can just stand up. I know these are popular these days, but when a CA needs something like that to make it ergonomic, we right away jump on it and make it happen. The other one is to maintain organization. And this one is important. And I use this example in a little bit of an extreme way, just to illustrate a point. Not actually the dictator that this is going to sound like, but it's a good example. So if I was to walk up to my CA's workstation and pick anything out on that workstation, anything, and pick it up and say, why is this here? I want to know that there's a reason for that. Okay. I don't want piles of clutter. And if I pick up something out of that clutter and say, why is this here? And they say, oh, well, that was from a year ago. I don't know. I just never got around to moving it or fixing it or finalizing it or anything. We don't want to see that clutter. There's something about clutter that I'll share with you. And that is that clutter will quickly reduce collections. Just remember that. And there's some universal law, but clutter reduces collections. Clutter reduces collections. Organization increases collections. Okay. So just make sure that everything's organized on there, and also explain the do's and don'ts. That's the next item on the list. The do's and don'ts are important because you want to know, this person wants to know, what is it that I'm supposed to do, but also what am I not supposed to do? Do you want your CAs to be doing personal texting on their cell phone while they're at the front desk and there's a line of patients, standing out the front door? Probably not. So make the do's and don'ts part of the training process. These are the things that I don't want you to do. These are the things that I do want you to do. And that general sort of macro view will help your new CA get up to speed quickly and not develop any bad habits. The next one is the communication center. And this one I shared with you at the seminar, but I'm going to go through it sort of visually here so you can understand this process. It's a great way to allow all of us on the team to have uninterrupted times of work. And I'll say that again, uninterrupted times of work, because when we're deep in a task and we're doing something and we're interrupted, ultimately it reduces our efficiency and it leads to mistakes. So there's a real simple way to organize this. We have it's called a communication center, and everybody on the team has a box in that central communication center with their name on it. Okay. So that's behind our front desk. It's kind of off to the side where patients don't really see it. And it's just up there at the front. In addition to that, at each one of our own workstations, we have a 3-tier shelving system. So 3 tiers. And those 3 tiers are set up in a way. The top tier is the inbox, the middle tier is the pending box, and the bottom tier is the out box. So in the morning, when I come into the office, I go straight to the communication center, and anything that's in my box, I take all of it out and I bring it to my workstation and I put it at the top shelf, which is the inbox. From there, I start to work on it. Now, when I get to the office, I've got just a couple minutes to do that. So I just set it down, because then I go on the floor and I'm adjusting patients and we're busy. But after I'm done adjusting patients, then I have a break from adjusting patients. And that's when I sit down and I start to work on my inbox, which is no longer at the communication center. It's just on my desk. From the inbox, I'll go through, just do a quick once through. What can I get done quickly within a minute or less? And I go through all the items. And when those items are done, I put them in the bottom shelf. That's the completed box. Anything that I can't finish quickly, I put in the pending box. And then time permitting, I work on the pending box through the course of the day or through the course of the shift. The goal is at the end of the day, my inbox has come from the communication center with everything in the communication center now in my inbox. And at the end of the day, my goal is that everything is at the outbox. And that way I can just take that entire stack of things in the outbox and go and take them back to the communication center and either disseminate them to whoever's responsible for finalizing that step, or I shred it because it's done, or I put it in the scan box to be scanned into a patient file, which is, again, another part of another individual on the team's responsibilities, or it goes home with me. It just depends. But the goal is to get everything from the inbox to the outbox by the end of the day. And that way, at the end of the day, the outbox gets emptied and you're done. That's the communication center. That's how that works. And that will keep you organized in a way so that things don't build up and there's no clutter, right? Remember what I said about clutter? Clutter reduces collections. Clutter reduces collections. So just remember that. And this is a great way to avoid any clutter from building up. Let's see. I need to just move this a little bit. There we go. Okay, great. And as I said, if there's anyone that has a question, you're welcome to just raise your hand. I'll be happy to open up your line. There we go. Okay, so let's keep going. This is the job duties training. Now, I want to just show this simply, and then I'm going to show you the website, which has the more detailed view. But this is a great way to have a new CA that joins your team quickly be able to run the front desk. And I'll just frame this because the goal when you hire a new CA is you want them to be able to answer the phone and you want them to be able to run the front, schedule appointments at the front desk, right? Handle patient flow. Well, answering the phone is actually a bigger topic than it might seem at first. The reason being, if it's a patient calling that just says, I want to reschedule my appointment, great. Most people could do that with very little training. But if it's a person that calls and says, I'm a new patient, I want to know what technique the doctor practices or uses, or I want to know how much my first visit is going to cost me, or I want to know if the doctor helps with migraine headaches, that might not be the best position for a brand new CA to be able to take that call. So we want to quickly educate our CA to get up to speed so they can answer the phones intelligently and give confident, complete answers for even the shoppers out there that are calling around to find a chiropractor, right? The phone is basically like our front door. So we're going to use the job duties training to quickly, within 1 week, have our brand new CA answering the phone. Within 1 week, that's fast, but it can be done, and I'll show you how. Okay, so let's, actually, we're going to jump over to the next one. I'll kind of wrap this up in just a moment, and then I'm going to show you the website, and then it'll make more sense. So the other material that we have is the training scripts outline, and that actually is a more expanded view of a training schedule that goes on for actually up to about 12 weeks. And that gets your new CA from answering the phone, as I shared, all the way up to and including delivering reports of findings, completing financial arrangements, seeing new patients and doing consultations and exams, like the whole broad spectrum gamut of things that a CA can do. It includes all of it. So that's a more in-depth training schedule, and I'll show you how to use that as well. We've also provided a sample employment schedule, and I'm going to show you this on the next slide, because what this does incorporate is called the alternative work week. And the beauty of the alternative work week, and this is for the California docs on our call. I know there's some of you who are out of state, but for the California docs, the alternative work week is a great tool for you to be able to have CAs working on days when they might put in longer than 8 hours, and then offset that by having shorter hours on other days. I'll just use my office as an example. Monday, we'll work 9 or 10 hours in a day. My CAs then will, and that's my CAs as well. But then Tuesday, we're only open in the afternoon. So they'll put in a short half day on Tuesday. It's a great balance because they get the morning off on Tuesdays. They love it. They can be with their family, with their kids. But then Monday, we're here, we're working, and we just lump it all into a longer day. So you'll see on this schedule that during the first month of employment, we do a pretty intense training schedule. So there's a lot of what we call split shifts, or 8 or 9 hour days, or even 10-hour days. But once we get past that, then they move over to the long-term employment, which has a much more balanced schedule, and it ties in with the alternative work week that I just shared with you. All right. There's a couple of key points about the alternative work week. You need to register it with the Employment Development Department. So your office does have to be registered in order for you to use that and have it be legal. And again, this is for the California docs. That's important. And there's other states that use the alternative work week as well, but just check with your state laws to make sure that it's in place. Some of the advantages, the requirements are 40 hours a week and not 8 hours a day. What does that mean? That means that a CA can work up to 40 hours in a week without being paid overtime. Instead of, in California, if you work over 8 hours in a day, you're automatically paid overtime. Again, I like to have a flexible, balanced schedule. I want it to be a win-win for my team. So they love this schedule, because while Monday, they may not be paid overtime for the extra couple hours on Monday, they get the half day on Tuesday. And so it balances out really nicely. And it's a win-win for everyone. So it benefits the individual and the entire team. There's varied lengths of shifts, which I just shared with you, with a flexible schedule. And with cross-training through the alternative work week, you're going to have a much better growth potential. So just some points on that will help you. Let's talk about wages. During the training period for a new CA, their wages they're not paid at their full wages. This is in my office. Now, you might decide to do this differently, but I've been in practice for 26 years, and I have yet to have a CA who just comes right in and hits the ground running so fast that I'm instantly not even having to train them or do anything. They just go for it. That's what it takes to get paid the normal wage. So there's a reduced wage for the first part, because later on, once they're up to speed and they're doing all the things that they need to do, then of course their wages are going to be paid at a higher rate. And it's also a nice incentive for them to get through that training period on time and quickly, so they can get to the point where they're fully trained, they're contributing to the practice in a meaningful, accountable way, and there's a reflection in their pay schedule with that. Okay, so wages increase when the training is completed and the goals are reached or exceeded. So when there's goals in place, if you want to see a catalyst for reaching those goals, just give your CA a financial incentive to reach those goals. You'll see a great CA performing, and you'll reach your goals much, much faster, right? Which is what we all want. We all want that. So again, that training schedule applies here. This is something else that I do for my team that I can share with you. I know there's CAs on the call, but this is just a lot of fun. I schedule my team for 38 hours a week. I know there's going to be some days where they go over longer, and it's going to push us up into the close to 40-hour range. But I schedule them for 38 hours because if they get their work done on time, that's an automatic raise, right? If they're paid for 40 hours, but they get it done in 38, that's 2 extra hours of paid time that they got just for getting their work done on time. And great example this week on Tuesday, we left right on time. It might have even been a little bit early. We were done. We left early, or we took off, and that was it. Last night, we had a busy day, and we had a lot of later new patients scheduled in the afternoon. So we ended up staying a few minutes over last night. I don't have to worry about paying the overtime for that, because we all celebrated when we left early on Tuesday. Yeah, we had to work a little harder on Wednesday, but it's okay. It balances out. And that's the point of this slide. Let's talk about patient time versus production time. I know we're covering a lot of topics, but I want to just say, from the standpoint of a training schedule, there's a lot that comes into training, right? There's different aspects of how you're training your CA, how you're letting them know about the parameters of how your office works. So if you do need to come back and re-listen to this webinar to get those parameters in place, just come back and re-listen to it, and it's all recorded, so it'll be there for you. So patient time is specifically set up when patients are in the office, and we have designated hours for that. They include adjusting times and report of findings and care plan renewals. We also have production time, and production time is time when there's no patients in the office, and we're doing other things to keep the office running and staying on track. Things like reactivation calls, postcards being sent out, letters to missing in action patients, insurance work if you do that, team training. This is needing to happen when there's no patients in the office. So there's a big difference between production time and training time. In my office, we're so busy. Our production time requires that we have a whole day of the week, one day of the week, that we don't even see any patients. That's how much production time work we have. So if you can, you think about that, there's a lot of work behind the scenes that makes, when patients are there, seem like the office is just this Taj Mahal and organized practice. Well, that doesn't come without work. So we have a whole day just dedicated to follow up with patients, paperwork that needs to be done, team training, and all the things that we meet on and talk about that keep the office running smoothly behind the scenes. So just make sure you have enough production time to keep that happening and flowing. All right. So then next week, we're going to talk about the hiring a DC. So we're going to transition from a training schedule for CAs. We're going to talk about hiring another doctor for those of you who are ready to hire an associate. We'll get into that. And then I'll share that topic with you as well. So let me just bump this over here. And then I do see a hand up. So I'm going to open up your lines. I will jump over to the website in just a minute too. So bear with me for just a moment here. Let me just get that ready for you. Let's see. Where did you go? Oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry, I'm bouncing through a couple of screens here, but with that, all right. So I do see a question from Dr. Janji. So Dr. George, welcome to our call.
Hello. Hello?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Hello, I hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
So what do you think about, so let's say we'll hire a CA, but before the hiring process, he or she had already, let's say, like a dental surgery set up, and that lands during that training schedule. Do you still try to scrunch all the training of the scripts in that 3-month period, even if they're like out for 1 week?
Great question. It really depends. The short answer would be yes. Obviously, we're not going to change it because we want to stay on track and stay focused. But given the circumstances, they've got some time off that was previously scheduled, then just work around that. And even on the big picture, I've had plenty of CAs over the years that didn't finish the entire training schedule in the 3 months, and it's okay as long as I see that they're diligent about it, they're working hard, they're studying the scripts that need to be applied, and they're implementing the job duties. That's great. As long as we're moving forward, I'm not so rigid on it. As I said, though, if you want to put an incentive on that, so let's just say I hire a new CA, and when I hire the CA, they say, I've got a week off for some dental work and I won't be able to work because it's already scheduled. Okay, no problem. I'll just tell you that at the end of 3 months, if you've passed all your scripts and you've been trained and you're performing those areas, I'll bump your pay up by X amount. Now, that's fine taking the week off. And if you don't pass the scripts in the time frame, that's okay. You just won't get the raise. But if you do pass in the time frame, even with the time that you took off, you'll get the raise. What do you think the CA is going to do?
Hustle hard.
They're going to hustle hard. Yeah. I mean, and that's great. And if they don't, it's okay. I wouldn't, harp on it about it. No problem. We'll just wait to plug in that raise until a little bit later when you are done. That's okay. No problem.
When do you do the testing script exactly? Like, when do you test them?
It's during production time. So, and actually I can show you, let me jump back over to the site because I want to show you that right now. It's a great question. Okay, so I've opened up the materials that are on the site, but this is our materials for this week. We've got our videos. So we have a training schedule intro, we have the alternative work week, and then we have all the documents here for you. I'm going to go to the training scripts here, which is what you just asked about. So the way this process works is that we deliver the scripts to the new CA. Then there's a completion date that's set up right when they're hired. So that completion date is pre-scheduled for 3 months out from when they started the job. Then during each week of that training schedule, my primary CA is going to work with my CA and get them proficient enough with that section so that they pass that section, and she initials it. That's right here, the PCA pass. So that's this page is going to start to get filled up vertically with the PCA's initials in each section. Then once that's passed, it comes to me, and then I meet with that CA and I test them and make sure that they passed, and I initial this column. And we just work down this page with these two columns, and we're each initialing, myself and my PCA, my primary CA are initialing as we work down the page until we get to the bottom, and we've got the beginner scripts, the intermediate scripts, and then we have an advanced scripts down here. And you can see that this can go all the way through. I mean, I've had CAs that actually, and I still do actually, that give public talks. They'll go out and do a company lecture and sign up a bunch of new patients, and then come back and say, hey, here's how many new patients I signed up. So this can be, and I've had CAs that also do spinal screenings for us. I don't currently right now, post-COVID, but all the other stuff, my CAs are all completely trained and proficient on. So that's one of the materials for this week. And let's see, I want to just go back to you there, Dr. George. Was there anything else?
No, thank
Okay.
you.
Great question. Thank you for that. And for anybody else, you can raise your hand anytime. I'm happy to answer your questions. Let me just go through a couple of these materials because we've got the training scripts outlined. But prior to that, I mentioned that in the first week, I've got each of the 5-day sequences for your CAs to follow, so that by the end of the first week, oops, actually, sorry, Dr. Janji, I just sent you another message. You can disregard that. I'm going to just put your hand down. There we go. Okay. So in the first week, by the end of that week, day 5, they are answering the phones and rescheduling missed appointments, and even scheduling new patients, including all the shopper questions. And that'll come up in module 2. So we have our next seminar coming up in March. That's the new patient module. I'll be teaching you exactly what those shopper questions are and how the responses should be organized by your CA, so that you can feel confident knowing that your CA, when they answer the phone, even if it's somebody saying, do you take my insurance? What's my copay going to be? What technique does the doctor practice? Anything, they're going to have the answers, and they're going to feel comfortable, or you're going to feel comfortable with them answering the phone, regardless of who calls. One of the most frustrating phone calls that can happen is a new patient that calls, and your CA answers and the new patient says, hi, what technique does the doctor practice? And your CA says, oh, he practices the Gonstead technique. And the new patient says, oh, actually, I was looking for diversified. Thanks. Bye. And they hang up. Right now, we know there's a lot of overlap. Those of us doctors on the call, there's a lot of overlap between Gonstead and diversified, right? If you are trained in one, you can be proficient in the other, and vice versa. So if a new patient was to ask you, hey, do you do the Gonstead technique, and you're a diversified practitioner, you could say, oh, you want a Gonstead adjustment? I can help you. See, that's the kind of skill set that we want to create for our CA, is that level of confidence coming through the phone at all times. Okay, so this will train your in your first week, all the basics too. How to get the office opened up, unlocking the practice. Is there an alarm system? How does that work? Getting their employee binder, all the required paperwork for having a legal employee in your state. So that's all in this list, and you'll want to go through that and make sure you plug that in. The next is the details behind the alternative work week. This is the form that has, for California, has the parameters of implementing the alternative work week, and it also has this it has to be voted in, which that's on here too. Your team can vote that in. I've never had my CAs ever vote no on this, but the state of California requires that it's voted. And then there's a form that goes into the Division of Labor Statistics and Research. You mail that in, showing that it was voted into effect. That's signed with the state, and keep a copy on record for you. And then you're in, and it's in effect permanently. So really great form for you there. As I said, we have an open employment schedule, so you can use that to create your own schedule. But if you're not quite sure on how you want to set up your schedule, we also have our sample employment schedule, which, as I pointed out, there's a difference between the first month and the ongoing future. So the first month has, and this is important, so I'm going to kind of slow this down for you. The first month schedule in these samples has split shifts for the whole month. Why is that? The reason why that is because we want to have a new CA spending as much time in front of patients as possible, so they understand the flow of, meeting the patients, spending time collecting payments, rescheduling appointments, scheduling appointments, and understanding the office flow. Then we dive into things like new patients, report of findings, care plan renewals. So even if I'm hiring a CA specifically to say, deliver reports of findings, right? I'm still going to start them at the front desk so they get comfortable with the overall flow, because it gives them a good macro view of how everything fits together in a busy practice. So that way they'll see they'll get exposed to that first, and then they can run from there. Okay, so that's there for you, and it has, of course, the ongoing schedule as well. Okay, so with that, appreciate you being part of DC Trainings. We're in the training schedule section. Next week, we'll get into hiring an associate doctor. That's going to be a great webinar. That's a hot topic. We always have a lot of interest around that topic. And in my opinion, it's one of those important ones, because if we have more doctors, more chiropractors serving more patients, it grows the profession, brings more health to humanity, keeps everybody in our communities functioning in their lives in a way that is subluxation free, which gives us the highest potential to maintain optimum health. And I love chiropractic for that reason. I'll look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks again.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.